Gray Locke, The Witch of Clover Hill, by C.A. Chicoine, author of Gray Locke, The Mystery of the Weeping Rocks. Gray Locke sat in the stillness of his attic room, whispering between breaths, Longfellow, Poe's tales of mystery and imagination, Macbeth, Treasure Island, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. He was perusing the book titles lined up on the shelf, running his fingers across their bumpy spines, eagerly searching for a book whose title slipped his mind. The book contained a four-leaf clover that he'd found over the summer while visiting his grandparents in western Massachusetts. In The Witch of Clover Hill, there's a great deal brewing in the witch's cauldron. Gray Locke's 10-year-old imagination shines through as he goes about trying to demystify luck, ghosts, and witches. The story begins in his home in Marlborough, Massachusetts. There, he shows his friends, Doug and Kevin, a full-leaf clover that he found. That sparks a competition between Gray and Doug over who can gain the most luck, using such charms as a stray eyelash, rabbit's foot, lucky penny, and lucky mibs. Then the story takes a turn when the boys meet the new kid, Mandy. Can they all be friends? When Mandy introduces her best friend PJ to the group, that question is put to the test. The day of the festival had finally arrived. Vendors lined both sides of the street with their tents filled with handmade items, crafts, jewelry, and baked goods. The street where Gray had pulled his wagon through, filled with mums and hay, had become inhabited by people, hundreds of people, pushing strollers, holding babies, moving wheelchairs, holding brightly colored balloons, and holding hands. And as soon as Mandy saw him, she grabbed hold of PJ and headed straight over to him. He was making some final adjustments to a scarecrow, securing his straw hat with its stampede string. "Gray," she yelled. "Hello, Mandy," he waved. "Well?" asked Mandy as she reached him. "What?" he asked. Gray noticed something different about her, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. "You like?" she said, looking up, sporting her new hat. "Well, yeah," he answered, blushing brightly. "The hat, Goofy," she said. "Oh, yes, it's lovely, too," he replied, blushing redder than before at his mistaking her for liking her. "This is PJ," Mandy introduced. "Yeah, hi, Gray," she said without expression. "Hello," he replied with a nod. "So where are you going first?" asked Mandy. "The race should be starting soon," Gray said, referring to his watch. "Big deal," groaned PJ. "Anyone can run a mile." "Oh, yeah?" interjected Doug. "I'd like to see you try it." Well, look what escaped from the circus," sniped PJ. "A pair of baboons." "Hey," declared Kevin, "what did I do?" "Ooh, ah!" PJ replied in monkey talk. PJ and Doug were in the same English class together in school. Needless to say, they weren't exactly chummy. Doug, with a couple of his friends, sat behind her and her friends and was always getting into trouble for one thing or another. From that moment on, Gray knew that there was going to be a day full of banter between the two. Then PJ and the gang stumbled upon an old Ouija board game, and she convinces the others that they need the assistance of a witch to help make contact with someone from Gray's past. While the witch's cauldron is brewing with lucky charms and Ouija boards, Gray's aunt brings him a gift, and that gift opened up an entire new universe for Gray. Using a spaceship of the imagination, Mox, he becomes an intergalactic ranger and soars off to compete in a championship super shooter tournament. But he soon discovers that he got little more than he bargained for. In order for him to win the tournament, he has to face witches, monkey boys, rats, a worm, and a host of other entities. The Dust Witch warned that he'll be expected to go through the same portal he came from. However, if he did, he'd not live to remember it. So, instead, she directed him to another portal, deep in the bowels of her network of tunnels. She guided him back to the Chamber of 9 Tunnels. Then they entered another long, dank, and dark tunnel, stepping down into a small chamber until they reached an end, and said, "This is where I'll have to say goodbye." "What, this here?" asked Commander Gray, pointing to a tunnel barely a quarter his height. "Yes," she replied, "it's a wormhole." He looked again at the opening to examine its integrity. I won't meet up with any critters crawling in there, will I? A worm, she replied with a smile, if you're lucky. If you do come across a worm, be gentle. Give it a light pat to let it know that you don't mean to eat it. Then with widened eyes she asked, You don't eat worms, do you? No. Good, she nodded. Well, as you'll probably find out, you really won't be able to go around the worm. So it'll be best to crawl over and onto it, and then hold on real tight. It'll save you a lot of work and time. Thank you for all your help, he said. It's been a pleasure meeting your acquaintance, Commander Gray, she said. I have complete faith in you. With that, Commander Gray saluted, and then crawled through the tunnel. He got only 20 yards or so, although it seemed light years to him, before he heard a gurgling noise up ahead of him, and then a gust of air shoot past him. It's okay, he said aloud to himself to help calm his nerves. Then he proceeded to crawl some more until he came upon a slithery blockage ahead of him. The worm, he said to himself. He gave it a gentle pat. Then he crawled onto it, squishing in between the top wall of the tunnel and the squishy, slithery surface of the giant worm. Then he held on as tightly as he could to one of its folds as the locomotion of the worm's muscular contractions sped them through the wormhole up to speeds unimaginable for earthworms back home. Using his imagination and intuition, Gray finds creative solutions to the challenges that lie ahead of him, both in the universe of his imagination and in the real world. When we dance amidst the twirling turmoil, sometimes we trip and fall. So we pick ourselves back up and continue to dance.